on Teams.
No problem, no problem. We are
Uh,
going.
so
This is good.
anyhow, if
This
you
is
can,
good because the Microsoft is offering very good opportunities, especially you join it as organization or foundation, and they give you many accounts that are free, no? Instead of
okay,
Zoom, you have
yeah,
to pay. And that this is an opportunity that these tools we can use for our communities. That's why we opted for this platform.
yeah. Are we beginning, Father Albero?
Yeah, yes.
Maybe,
So we
may,
can start. Please, Luis, you start the record.
yeah, maybe tomorrow you can see me,
Already,
I can
already.
see you as well. Uh, okay, all right. So I suggested to Father Albero that the module that I'm going to facilitate is on doing enculturation in the context of Asia. Because when I reviewed the list of modules, I think in my view there is a need to refresh ourselves of the idea of enculturation once more. No, so I suggested that I focus on doing enculturation in the Asian context. Um, you have been familiar of the Asian context. We have many forums. We have uh, attended so many seminars already, trying to understand what is the Asian context. And uh, broadly speaking, we can talk about Asia being the home of diverse religions in the world. But other than it is a home of diverse religions, we know also that there is a diversity of culture in Asia and that there is an overwhelming poverty in the Asian context. So if we consider these three hallmarks of the Asian context coming from the discernment of the Federation of Asian Bishops Conference, the question that is ahead or that is in front of us is how to do enculturation or how to bring the message of Christ or the gospel of Christ in that kind of context. Um, roughly, I would like to engage you in meaningful conversation about enculturation or on your experience of doing enculturation in different communities where you have been working. Um, I put this as a priority because I am looking at you as adept or even greatly in touch with your experiences on enculturation. So I do not I do not presume I do not have even the uh, slightest presumption that I am an expert on this topic, no, but I would like to benefit from your own narratives as well. So this is our primary objective in this uh, two sessions, no? But also it may be good to go back to refresh ourselves again of our understanding of the basic information relevant to doing enculturation. So that's what I am looking at it as an important uh, objective as well. So to offer and refresh our understanding of the basic information relevant to doing enculturation. So approximately with these two basic objectives that we have, the two sessions that we devote, no, from today until tomorrow may just be a start up for a deeper conversation on doing enculturation in Asia. Uh, yes, it has to be a continuing conversation because you will see that culture being a dynamic reality in our life, needs also that there has to be a continuing platform of dialogue between Christianity and different cultures. No, so the dialogue keeps going because culture in itself is a dynamic reality. No, so let us start with this basic information on the definition. Many scholars who attempted to represent what enculturation is uh, have a common understanding that boils down to what Pedro Arrupe mentioned in the early 70s, that enculturation must be understood primarily as a process and supposedly a better process of evangelization or bringing the Christian faith to the different cultures all over the world. So, if you take this definition from Arupe, taking enculturation as a process, it is a continuing process, but it is also presuming that by proposing another process after so many centuries of evangelizing the world, there is a recognition that there was or there were errors in the process that have been utilized in bringing the gospel to the different cultures. No, for Arupe, there is a key test that we need to deploy when we try to detect or to evaluate in a way if there is an enculturation that is really taking place. So the question of are people's lives and cultures being transformed in faith is a key test, no, that we can utilize whenever we want to gauge or measure if there is such really an enculturation or not. But other than this, which we will go back at the later part of our discussion, briefly also, this one is coming from Aylward Shorter, as I also synthesize it. He mentions also that enculturation can be basically defined as a creative and dynamic relationship. So it is resonating to what Arupe mentions, no, in his definition being a process. There is a dynamic relationship between the Christian message and cultures. In this understanding, you will see that there is a uh, mutual enrichment. You can assume safely that there is a mutual enrichment between Christianity or the Christian message and that of a culture receiving that Christian message. If there are challenges being put forward by Christianity to cultures, there are also questions. There are also interrogations that come from the ground or from the cultures. So thereby the creative and dynamic relationship must be present. But apart from that, enculturation, I mentioned a while ago, must be understood as a developing reality in the church, a continuing reality in the church. Uh, primarily because our cultures keep developing as well, no? So the continuing evangelization of the world through enculturation or enculturation in itself must be a continuing process and concern or reality in the church. Uh, now that we said that, we also say that Christianity cannot exist in a except in a cultural form. There is always like a recipient of the message, no? Christianity being a message on what it means to be human and what it means to be a believer needs a certain receptacle, a kind of container, if you want to imagine. the message cannot be dispersed, cannot be just diverse or abstract. Christianity takes the form of a concrete living out of it through our diverse cultural contexts or forms. No, so uh, meaning to say, our Christian message is being received by diverse cultures all over the world. Now, later, when we discuss about issues and tensions on enculturation, you will see that some parts of Christianity have not been accepted, or if you listen to Aloysius Pieris or even some theologians from Asia, they were telling that in cultures or Asian contexts where the Asian religions penetrated, uh, or the different Asian religions saturated a certain society, it may be difficult for Christianity to find its space, no? And so it makes sense that Christianity assumes the posture of dialogue, no? Sometimes there are theologians who propose dialogue through correlation rather than dialogue in view of conversion or converting the other religions. We have to be satisfied with that dialogue through correlation, as Paul Tillich and other theologians would propose. Like even Lonergan, he was mentioning about dialogue through correlation in the context that there are already religions that saturated or penetrated a certain culture or society. So again, when we say that Christianity cannot exist except in a cultural form, this brings us to the necessity of a continuing process of enculturation. Okay, so going back to what Arupe and later short Aylward Shorter mentioned, that there has to be a dynamic, creative relationship between the Christian message and cultures, we can then conclude that there is truly an enculturation when there is a mutual symbiosis of faith and culture, no? When there is truly an enrichment on the part of Christianity and on the part of the receiving culture. Okay. Just checking if I'm still with you or not with you anymore. Hello?
Yes, everything very good, Emil. We are
Okay, okay.
watching. Very good.
Okay, okay. So I continue. Now, uh, let's just go back to some key terms that have been associated and have significance or relevance to enculturation. No, there are at least 4 or 5 key terms that we need to be mindful as we approach or as we try to deepen our understanding of enculturation. Uh, when we study enculturation being a process of evangelization, if you wish to put it that way, for sure you cannot bypass the main concern of enculturation, which is the evangelization of culture. No, uh, there has to be for a theologian or pastoral agent a deep or deeper appreciation and understanding of culture, because if you cannot understand it, then there is perhaps a failure or errors to be committed in the process of enculturation. So, basic to anthropologists and even sociologists would affirm that a culture is something that you learn, something that you acquire throughout your life as a member of a particular society. Now, this is a very broad definition or understanding of culture in a way, but this is it. Now, fundamentally, culture is something that we learned and acquire being a member of a society. A culture does not come from heaven and it penetrated the individual. It is something that we learn through the process of a long socialization in the society that we belong. No, now to make it more how do you call it, to make it more understandable, I think the definition provided by Aylward Shorter in his book Towards Theology of Inculturation makes sense. No, he mentions that this culture that is acquired by an individual are actually referring to the transmitted patterns of meanings embodied in symbols, a pattern capable of development and change. In this definition, you can already see the privileging of several key concepts, no? Meanings. So when we speak of culture, we are referring to the meanings that are transmitted or embodied in symbols. Why, you may ask, why symbols? No, uh, it may help that in the future there should be a deeper, I think, a deeper way to understand also our symbols because they are very important when we approach a certain culture. It is also important for a pastoral agent that we get hold of what meaning or what what are the meanings or the values that we keep as important. And normally these values are oftentimes embodied also in symbols, symbols that are tangible, symbols that may be also intangible. For instance, our beliefs or uh, even history or philosophy or other conceptual symbols, these are not concrete, but they are ideas. No, they are intangibles, but they are important. Now, if this what constitute culture, then there is an added element to the characterization or definition of it, which is something that is dynamic. It is capable of developing, meaning culture has never been a frozen reality. It keeps evolving. And so, as a culture interacts with another, which many anthropologists would say, there is also what they call a process of acculturation or change. We will go to that term later. No, so this is important to keep in mind. Now, this second term in enculturation, this is different from inculturation. When you see this term with letter E, it is anthropological or sociological concept, whereas inculturation with the letter I is a theological concept. No, but enculturation is referring broadly to the cultural learning process that we all undergo as members of our society. In sociology, this is what they call a broader category of socialization. No? Socialization is basically a cultural learning process. You are being introduced to the different elements of your culture. For example, if you make an accounting of your growth as individual, you will see that you learned many things in life until now that you're adult because of the process of enculturation or socialization. We are introduced to the cultural elements of our society. No, so in here, you will see that in the enculturation process, there is a outstanding role of our adults. All of us were babies. We were born as infants and then later we become grown-ups. But Along these critical years, there were adults that surrounded us and that socialize us to our respective culture. And so you will then see that even the faith that we have learned or inherited came from our adults. Now, uh, it means that whatever inadequacies of the understanding of faith that they have inherited from the past may have been passed on as well to us when we were still young. And so when we get old, we similarly copied more or less or actualize the errors of the past. And so it is important that there is an inculturation so to correct the errors of the past, no? Or the errors of the faith that we have inherited as well. Uh, Even the theologies that we have inherited in the past may have been inadequate when we have reached a certain maturity in life, no? So this enculturation, as you will see, is largely an informal and unconscious process. In fact, the whole time that we have been learning our culture was actually done not inside the classroom, but in a day-to-day interaction with the different people surrounding us, no? Including our interaction with our environment. Now, the third concept is the term acculturation. Acculturation is another anthropological concept, which is basically about the contact of two or more cultures. When we say acculturation, there is a safe assumption that as cultures have interaction, there is dynamic of borrowing from each other. For example, language. Symbols are also borrowed by one culture from the other, or you can say there may be an exchange of symbols. No, there may be mutual enrichment of symbols. No, but also many anthropologists would also point out that in the acculturation, in the borrowing of cultures or encounter of different cultures, there are modifications of culture in freedom. This means that there are ways that we want to change, but we change them, no, in freedom. A more concrete example is when we decided to accept Christianity. Okay, we accepted Christianity in freedom. That's a uh, supposedly, no, that's an assumption that should be there. But also, there are cases that Christianity was accepted because they have no option than to accept it uh, by convenience or by a certain demand. They have to embrace Christianity. No, for example, in the Philippines, among the natives, there is a historical fact that Christianity was received by the natives uh, with certain element of force, no, from the colonial powers. Okay, so and that's also a case in other contexts. So there is a modification or changes of culture done in freedom when two cultures interact. Uh, Now, to put that in the context of the church, you will see that the faithful, as they interact with the other culture, there are also certain modifications or changes that they make in their own lives. No, for instance, religiosity that they see from the Buddhists and the Muslim and the other religions may also bring a greater sense of of religiosity in the practice of the Christian faith. Okay, so we are almost done with the associated terms. Number four is the cultural domination. Uh, we cannot deny a culture that is assuming a dominant position and a culture that is regarded as inferior culture. No, uh, even in our own national communities, you will see that different ethnic groups or societies in our national community or society would have would would actually demonstrate certain degree of cultural domination. So this cultural domination is oftentimes seen in the so-called ethnocentric posture. For instance, among us Filipinos here, those who came from the central regions would normally assume that they are better than those groups or ethnicities in the southern region or even in the northernmost region of the country. So there is that ethnocentric posture. No? So ethnocentrism is a reality, but also in different races like Asians compared or in relation to the Europeans or Americans, you will notice that there are postures of ethnocentrism or cultural domination from the West embodied in the posture of Europeans and even Americans. No, so now in the context of enculturation, you will see also that cultural domination is operating either within the church or even among other religions. No? For instance, in the Roman Catholic Church, you will see that in varied circumstances, there are cultural domination emanating from the clergy over the laity. And even among the laity themselves, there may be certain sections among the laity that may assume a higher standing or position in the church over the other sections of the church. Even in our families, you will see that cultural domination is at work. Uh, in general culture, you will see that male domination is there, which is actually a manifestation of cultural domination. Uh, Male over female, no? So that's why there is a resurgence, there is a continuing resurgence of feminism all over the world. But today, because of the postmodern philosophy or theologies, you will see the reassertion of importance of dialogue, importance of uh, we call it diversity, no, and equality as well. You cannot impose a certain meta narrative or a grand truth or narrative that is totalizing or that is controlling others. So all this development would have actually an implication to how we are going to carry enculturation today. No? Okay. Hello, are you still there? Yeah, just checking.
Yes,
Yes,
we
yes,
are.
I,
yes.
I can hear
Yes,
Yes,
we
you.
yes,
are.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I move on to this last concept before I go back to I elaborating again enculturation. This number five is something that was advocated uh, not after Vatican II. It was a post-Vatican development, the so-called interculturation. Some theologians would propose that instead of using inculturation, which is actually like an old, but it's not actually very old, uh, it began to gain currency in the theological landscape sometime in the 1970s onward. Now, in the early 90s, or even a decade after, there were suggestions that why not replace enculturation with this term interculturation or interculturality? You will notice that it will not actually simplify the concept of enculturation, although briefly we can say that by interculturation we mean that enculturation must be always an intercultural activity with intercultural benefits. Okay. But since interculturation or interculturality is more attached to the social science, especially sociology and anthropology, many theologians would avoid using it in the theological uh, arena or theological field. Instead, they maintained enculturation. Even today, you seldom see interculturality or interculturation as a replacement of the so-called enculturation. So, having said that, uh, let's move to the third part of our discussion. I'm supposed to end after how many minutes, Father Albero? I will be ending soon, but let me refresh you. Let us go back to the fundamental or foundational truths of enculturation. There are at least five truths or five statements that embody the truths of enculturation. This is important to go back to because if not, then we cannot actually promote enculturation, nor we may not be aware or consciously promoting it if we cannot appreciate the foundational truths of enculturation. The first truth why there was enculturation was the idea or the understanding of the church that the Holy Spirit or God Himself is the source of all truths, that we all long to that we all long to how do you call it, understand, although it may not be fully but substantially. No, we want to recognize in Christianity, we recognize that the source of this truth is God Himself. And we can also say that if this is the foundational truth of enculturation, then we can safely assume that God's word or message is actively present in all cultures. And therefore, the goods that we may see in every culture can be safely regarded as also work of the Holy Spirit or God Himself. And with that, we can also affirm that every culture is open or has the capacity to receive God. Now, before we enter a certain established religion or society, for instance, which may be foreign to us as Christian, there should be no hindrance of entering to it if our intention is to be enriched by that religion or culture, because we are confident that what we are approaching is also the work of God, the work of the Trinity. No, God must be at work in all cultures. So if this is what we have understood in the beginning, there could be no hindrance for us to open up for dialogue with one another. uh we it is on this premise that we can now appreciate the contribution of Pope Francis, why Francis was so adamant to open up the church for dialogue, because of this certain conviction that God's word or God must have been present in all his creation. And this affirms our understanding of God being a transcendent reality. If this God transcended, no, my culture, my church, then this God must have been present in other churches, in other religions, in other cultures and societies. Now, sadly, this truth of inculturation has not overwhelmed societies and cultures and churches and individuals. If you assess, for example, how inculturation or mission has been conducted throughout the past centuries, there has even a reservation to move to a certain society and culture because of the reservation that because of the destructive side of the culture that is manifested in that culture, there is a certain reservation from the missionaries to enter to that region. There are certain parts, no? Even in the Philippines, when the Muslim presence in the south of the Philippines have been so was advancing, there was a resignation from the early missionaries to backtrack, no, and no longer continue the evangelization of the southern part of the country. But luckily, there were missionary congregations that came after several years after Vatican II, and they were actually decided to go to the different cultures or societies in the south, which actually today we are actually benefiting from the early endeavors or undertakings of the missionaries in the south. You can see the growth of the church in the south of the Philippines through the early efforts of the missionaries. I suppose that in your context, you may notice a similar trajectory because of the early efforts. They may not be perfect, but the early missionaries who penetrated the margins of your society were actually outstanding narrative of this truth, no, that the Holy Spirit is actually actively present in that culture. So if this is a foundational truth of inculturation, you will see that the role of the theologian or the pastoral agent is not to evangelize the culture in itself. While you may offer the message, the Christian message to that culture, there is also an equally importance of discovering the presence of God in this culture, no, because of the affirmation that God must have been there before we arrive, no. So you can see that through this foundational truth, you will see that enculturation should be a dialogical process, a symbiotic process, no, a dynamic creative relationship of faith and culture. This is the second foundational truth of inculturation. It says that as no one culture has normative status in expressing the truths of faith, those truths are translatable into all cultures. You cannot actually impose one normative culture for all. That's why we were saying a while ago that an enemy of inculturation is any amount of the desire to dominate the other or cultural domination. So there is no culture that serves as the barometer, or you can say arbiter of divine truth. You cannot, no, for example, uh, many theologians in Asia actually resisted the so-called implantation of Western theologies in the different societies or cultures of Asia. Even in the Philippines, there was a time in the early 1980s that many of our theologians advocated what they call doing Filipino theology. I suppose there are also examples of that in your respective contexts or societies. So, no culture is the arbiter of divine truth. The divine truth can be translated in different cultures or accepted in different cultures. Now, in the church, we have long affirmed that any any truth or any claim on the faith or about the faith must be subjected to the discernment of the church teaching authority. When we speak of the church teaching authority, yes, we are referring to the teaching authority of our bishops or our cardinals and our pope, but also listening. This is again about synodality, listening also to one another. No, so even the truths that we proclaim in the church are and should be discerned in a synodal process. So that is the ultimate test if the truths about faith are actually must be subjected to a continuing discernment of the church. The third truth that we can find and that many theologians should agree is that inculturation must embrace all human endeavors. Uh, there has been the first wave of inculturation. If you look back at the history from 1965 onwards, there has been the priority of what they call liturgical inculturation. It has been so fast that there was an impression that when every time that we speak of inculturation, we cannot actually avoid thinking about liturgical inculturation. But we need to correct that inculturation is not only about liturgical inculturation, it is actually all about the liberation of the human being, no, or cultures from all forms of domination and injustice. If our inculturation does not embrace this undertaking of liberating cultures and people from anything that dehumanizes them, then I am afraid that that inculturation is a posture of tokenism. It's like you want you want to show that there is an inculturation, but in fact there is no substantial inculturation at all. When your concern is to revise the architectural structure of your churches, while your people are actually starving and being killed, being oppressed by the civil authorities, then there is a misunderstanding of inculturation. When we try to amplify the beauties of culture and neglect transforming or even saying something or critiquing the destructive side of culture, then I'm afraid it is a very shallow understanding of inculturation. So, to many theologians that we may encounter, they will always propose that inculturation must not only be about liturgical inculturation, it has to be the transformation of the whole culture and it has to be being enriched by the beauty and goodness of that culture. All right. I think I'm about to end. So, our ongoing task, if this is the understanding of inculturation, no, our ongoing task therefore is to expose and challenge cultural domination, even within our respective churches and religions. No, I suppose that our churches or religions are not are not completely uh, perfect. There must be still imperfections. Even our individual lives, there may be imperfections. Our societies, even in our relationships, if our relationships are not conforming to the liberating praxis of Christ and the message of Christian faith, then by all means, we must have that audacity or courage to transform it. I move to the fourth and second to the last statement about the foundational truths. The fourth one is the inculturation is the call to relieve the incarnation and paschal mystery of Christ. So, if this is our understanding of inculturation, that it is anchored on the reality of the incarnation of our God, but also the paschal mystery of this God, we will say that whenever inculturation is occurring, Christ is again becoming flesh and living among his people. No, so as Christians all over Asia are working in the remote villages, no, bringing that message of Christ to people who may not have heard of the gospel of Christ, or a living witness, a Christian witness uh, in unknown village or people that we interact, we are inculturating, we are embodying Christ in that society or culture as well. But a more profound understanding of inculturation must be associated to the so-called the Paschal mystery of Christ. And it means that our faith experience, in fact, calls people and cultures into the heart of Paschal mystery, which is translated as a process of dying to attitudes, values, and customs that are not in conformity with Christ's message, and have that courage to embrace what is new. I think this is important, especially to the destructive aspect of culture. There has to be a continuing dialogue that may take place. Christians must be inserted on that. A few days ago, I was privileged to listen to the experience of young indigenous leaders somewhere in the south, where Padre Pedro was is working at the moment, and they were talking about the killing in their village, no, where their parents were involved, but they were also saying that because our parents have learned the Christian faith, they began to abandon, no, that killing between families, no, the killing in the community, and they were thankful of the work of the Jesuits on that part of the country because they have been introduced to Christianity, which actually brought them to realize that they cannot or they should not be taking lives because of hatred and other conflicts. So I think this is also another test if there is really inculturation taking place. When there is a process of dying to the attitudes, the values, and customs that are not in conformity with the Christian message, then there must be an inculturation. Okay. Let me finish the last part of it and then I pause for maybe conversations. No, this is the last part of this section. Anyway, we still have session tomorrow. No, now ultimately, inculturation must also influence our understanding of church. So, inculturation is a process that is undertaken by the church or by the faithful, but it has to brought us to the realization of what is a church. And many theologians have been agreeing that the model of the church most suited to enculturation is that of the understanding of the church as a people of God. Why is this? Because this model of the church focuses on the communal nature of the church over the hierarchical nature of the church. And when we speak of enculturation, there must always be a privileging of the communal nature of the church. Even a priest or a bishop, no, entering a culture or a society of people must be humble enough to be really a brother, no, a brother to all without assuming a certain privilege or hierarchy. Because if that is the case, then the people that we are entering into for dialogue may not be able to feel and affirm that you are one with them, and that may actually detrimental to the continuation of enculturation process. In many cases, when the attitude of superiority pervades in our community, it always bring destruction. It always bring a certain tension that cripple us to continue our communal process. So I think it is time to reflect also on the attitude of the pastoral agent. How have we carried enculturation through the years? Uh, if our understanding of enculturation is that I am the learned and I am going to those who do not know the faith, I will educate them about the
True.
faith, then the whole understanding of enculturation is actually defeated. No, there is no real progress that may take place with that kind of attitude. Okay, I will be addressing the fourth and the fifth and the sixth part of this presentation tomorrow. I will also bring you to uh, a discussion of the interaction of culture and religion also tomorrow. I hope I can finish that part. I have few remaining slides for tomorrow, but I will add a discussion on culture and religion tomorrow. Uh, I think I have been talking enough for now, but maybe Father Albero, there is a time for conversation a bit, no?
Okay, Dr.
So
Emil. Yes, very good, very good. I don't know if you have any document or article or something that you can also share so we can offer to all the participants. In that way, we can also read more about your work. And
yeah,
I
yeah,
think it's very good. Yes. I don't know. You can
I
offer, you
will,
can send me and we can share with everybody.
yeah. I'll do that. Uh, I just yeah. I have to finalize a list. I am listing here several. Regarding the document, it may help that we read for now. They are available. It may be good to enrich ourselves with, of course, Vatican II, Agentes, if you wish. Uh, but also, it's good to read Evangelii Nunciandi, no? These two important documents. Even the uh, Querida Amazonia of Pope Francis, or the Synod of the Amazon. These are important documents that we need to we need to read, no? But I will be sharing other reading lists here tomorrow. Yeah.
Okay. I think we already have the time. I don't know if somebody want to do a very quick comment and then we can close the session. Okay, so if you have any comment, you can let also in the WhatsApp group, and then also Dr. Emil can see it, and maybe tomorrow he can elaborate more, etc. No. So thank you very much, Dr. Emil. Really very good, very well explained. So it give us a lot of material for us. So then tomorrow we meet again at the same time. So prepare yourself. And if you have any comment, maybe you can let in the WhatsApp group so Dr. Emil can see it. And yes, and if there is any other document information we can share, and then like this, we are going to prepare ourselves. So let us close our session, and greetings to everybody. Thank you very much, and a lot of blessings. Good
Thank
night.
you
Good night.
very much. Very good.